Today we're going to be adding the yellow brick caps to our staircase. When we're sticking these bricks on, it gives us one last opportunity to adjust the height of our stairs. I butter the back of the bricks with mortar. When I place the brick on top of our wet mortar and make any adjustments with my rubber hammer.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
Today we're going to be adding the yellow brick caps to our staircase. And the reason we're using these bricks for this staircase is this is an element that we've used throughout this entire project. The previous project was a retaining wall and ramp system, and we used these bricks extensively throughout it. We capped the top of the retaining wall with them, and we also used them for the edging of the ramp pathway to contain the golden path gravel. The original idea of these bricks is that they help tie the design into the house, as the colour and texture of these bricks match closely to the house bricks. After the construction of the retaining wall and ramp system, we had quite a few of these bricks left over, so that's why we decided to incorporate them in this staircase. As I'm doing my dry layout, I'm checking these bricks for damage. Some of them have chipped corners, and there's also some dirt stains, so I'm just sorting through to get the best ones for the top of this step. Material selection is a really important part of the process. And in this case, we're starting with the most exposed step. So I'm looking for relatively perfect bricks along this step, and we can use up some of the slightly chipped ones on the lower steps. I'm laying out all my bricks on a piece of timber to keep them clean, just slightly behind where we're going to be cementing them on. Once my layout's complete, I prepare to mix my mortar. There's different ways to approach sticking these tiles onto the concrete. Sometimes I use tile cement and sometimes I use standard mortar. It depends on how thick the join's going to be. When we're sticking these bricks on, it gives us one last opportunity to adjust the height of our stairs. And in this case, I want to add about 10 mil because of the way the concrete foundation came out. So I'm using mortar instead of tile cement because it's going to be a thicker join. I want to get the right kind of mix for my mortar. This is determined by how much water we add into the system. I want it stiff but still sticky. If there's too much water, it'll be sloppy and it won't hold the bricks up. And if it's too stiff, it doesn't stick very well to the bricks. So once I get the mix going, I just feel it with my trowel and then add a little more water if necessary. I'm adding a bed of concrete along the entire width of where all the bricks will be stuck down. I make sure I scrape the cement onto the concrete foundation. This really helps the cement stick to it. I'm trying to put a bed of cement on slightly higher than what we need, so when we push the bricks down to the correct height, we get a nice compression. This will create a really good bond between the brick and the concrete foundation. I take my time with this process, working it back and forth and building up the thickness slowly. I'm using the top of the charcoal pavers we glued onto the front of these steps as my reference point for the height. The bricks will be sitting flat on top of these pavers. When there's enough volume of mortar in place, I smooth the whole thing off, so we'll get a really good suction contact for the bricks on top. I butter the back of the bricks with mortar, making sure I scrape the mortar in thoroughly. By having mortar on both surfaces, you get a really strong contact. When I place the brick on top of our wet mortar, it should feel a little slippery and squishy. This is an indicator that we've got enough material underneath to make a good contact. I'm using a brick laid at 90 degrees to set the distance of where we put this first brick, because later on we'll be putting bricks around the top of the wall. I want to make sure there's enough room for them to line up properly. Once the brick's in the right position, I check it with my level to see if it's plumb. In this case, it's sitting a little low, so I lift it off and add a little more mortar underneath, put it back into position, and use my rubber hammer to tap it into the right alignment and double check with my level. When I'm satisfied it's sitting flat and plumb, I do one last check with my set square to make sure that it's sitting 90 degrees to the staircase. I'm taking my time with this process as this is the start of the layout and we have to get this right for all the other bricks to be able to line up properly. With the first brick locked into the correct position, I add the other bricks along the entire row. We repeat the same process for every brick, making sure there's enough mortar to get a soft squeeze to ensure really good contact between the brick and the concrete, and then move on to the next brick. I constantly check the bricks with my spirit level to make sure they're laying out plumb, and make any adjustments with my rubber hammer, tapping them gently into the right place. We complete the first row of bricks by double checking the edges and doing a little clean up with our spatula to make sure there's not any mortar sticking out where it shouldn't. I take my time with this process. I want to make sure I fill any little voids I find under the bricks, and it's a good chance to double check that all the bricks are lined up dead straight. With our top step complete, we move on to the next step. I start by cleaning the concrete surface with my sponge. Keeping everything clean is critical in this process. Cement won't adhere properly to dirty surfaces, so to ensure our cement bonds our bricks properly, I go to a lot of trouble to keep everything clean. I apply a bed of mortar slightly higher than our pavers, just as we did on the first step, and then start placing my bricks. After checking with my level, I can see this brick is sitting too low, so I remove it, add a little more mortar, and put it back in place. Mortar can dry out over time, so often I periodically put a small squirt of water into the tub of mortar to keep it to the right consistency. When the first brick is set in the right position, it's just a matter of adding all the other bricks next to it, as we did in the row above. Whenever I'm doing a repetitive process like this, which could be even considered tedious, I slow down, relax, and try and get present. By really focusing on every brick, putting it into the right position, tapping it in nicely, you can turn this process into a kind of meditation. I find it very relaxing and satisfying. Plus, we went to a lot of trouble to create the foundations and the shape of this staircase. So coming to the completion of this process can be very satisfying and rewarding.
Quiet voices in the night. Time is running out of sight. Lonely wind is passing by, tries to carry all the whispers that it finds. The walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made up place that only we can see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
On the bottom steps, I'm changing my system of how we're going to stick these pavers down. Instead of using mortar, I'm using tile cement here. The height between our concrete foundation and where we want the bricks to end up is much smaller, so we're only going to be using a very thin amount of material to stick these pavers on. Tile cement will squeeze into the tight space better than mortar will. I'm using a similar method as we did with the mortar, but instead of smoothing it out like we did with the mortar, we create a rough surface with our trowel rake, so these pavers stick really well.
Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. Tired snowflakes are coming down, collapse into water when they hit the ground. I hear the sound of empty streets. Yesterday has gone to sleep, so all that's left is you and me. I can't promise you're the only thing I see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say.
Staircases often have a slight overhang on the top horizontal surface where it meets the vertical front of the step. So for our bricks, I'm using a 6mm packer to keep a consistent overhang. I continue to use my level to check that all the bricks are coming out plumb and flat.
Quiet voices in the night, time is running out of sight. A lonely wind is passing by, tries to carry all the whispers that it finds. The walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see.
The bottom step paving bricks hang 50mm over the concrete foundation. We're leaving this room for a paver to be added underneath at a later date. I'm using my set square to make sure we're creating a consistent 50mm overhang. With this stage of our staircase complete, we're going to let these bricks set up whilst we turn our attention back to the natural stone wall. So join me in the next episode as we raise the formwork for our natural stone wall.
Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
Thanks for joining me this week in my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.